It's a hazy, marginal VFR summer morning, and we're inbound to Sydney, New York. Winds are light, and we're going to fly the RNAV runway 7 approach to a straight-in landing. This is an LNAV-only approach with an MDA about 1100 AGL. Garmin's plus V guidance will help us make a stabilized approach to land here, but there is trouble if we're not careful. Pause and spot the gotcha. There are two clues that we need to be extra vigilant as we transition to a landing on this approach. They are the visual segment obstacles note and the fact that landing on runway 7 is not authorized at night. The two notes here mean basically the same thing. There are obstacles below MDA that we need to be able to see to avoid, and because we can't see in the dark, landing on runway 7 is not authorized at night. Let's fly this approach and see why it's a problem. Alright, we've been cleared direct an 80 and cleared for the approach. We're supposed to cross an 80 at or above 3,600. So I'm going to load the procedure in here. We'll choose the RNAV 7, and here we can see that we'll have LNAV with plus V guidance. Now, an 80 is not available as one of the transitions because it's an intermediate fix. ATC can send you to an intermediate fix to start an approach as long as the turn is going to be less than 90 degrees. We're basically straight in here. But what I need to do is take any other transition and then just choose direct an 80. Any transition that includes an 80, which is all of them. So I'll just pick Grows. We don't want to go direct to Grows, so I'll choose just Load Approach. And then I can choose direct an 80. And the autopilot's in GPS mode, so it's going to make this slight little turn to the left here to go direct to an 80. A common mistake that you'll see here with the GPS is to think that nowhere in that sequence did we activate the approach, and to think that that means we need to go in and activate the approach now. Activating an approach in the Garmin's only tells the GPS that you want to go direct to the transition waypoint that you choose. Activating the approach here would actually send us direct to Grows. The GPS is smart enough that all we have to do is sequence onto the approach, as we're going to do here at an 80, and it'll handle the sequencing and the CDI scaling and all those things for us. There's never a need to activate approach. All activate approach does is send you to the IAF or the transition waypoint that you chose. And we're about to turn inbound at an 80 here. Here comes the turn. We'll be below the advisory glide path. As we turn inbound, I'm going to arm approach mode. We're headed right into the sunrise here, which is making it pretty difficult to see, even though the visibility is decent. It's about 5 miles. Put the gear down. We're now capturing the glide path, and we just have to make sure, as always with these advisory plus V glide paths, that we do clear the step downs that we need to. And as we'll see in a moment, you really can't trust them below MDA. 1.5 miles to Lotme, the final approach fix, and we need to make sure we're at or above 2,700 there, which we should be.
Terrain ahead.
We're getting a warning from ForeFlight about terrain ahead, and you might think that because we're on an approach procedure, we can ignore that, but you can also see out the window this ridge that we're going to cross here on the way to the airport, and we'll see how close we get to that ridge. Of course, if we are above the LNAV MDA here, of 2140, we're safe, but we're about to cross below that shortly.
Terrain ahead. 3 mile final runway 07.
3 mile final, and I do have the runway in sight, just barely through the haze.
Terrain ahead.
ForeFlight is insisting on this terrain warning here, and it's right to do so. We're going to descend below MDA because we've got the runway in sight, and I'm just going to stay coupled to the glide path for a moment here. Just for demonstration purposes, really. You can see on the GPS things are starting to look yellow. Now I'm not protected at all here by the glide path at this point. I should be on my own.
Warning, obstacle ahead.
More warnings from ForeFlight. I can see this ridge here, but you can imagine how if I were doing this at night, that runway is starting to disappear below the ridge. More terrain alerts. And in fact, if I don't do anything, this plus V glide path is going to hit the top of the hill. So let's disconnect, power up a bit, and not hit the hill. And now we can make a relatively normal straight-in descent to runway 7 here. But you can see just how hazardous this would be at night, or if the sun were a little bit lower and I couldn't make out the ridge in front of me. And it's obvious now that it's absolutely critical that you see and avoid obstacles below MDA, even if you have an advisory glide path. No guarantees come with that. Well, that worked out, but it's obvious there how it might not have worked out. And this might be a case where a circling approach would actually be the better choice. The weather's good enough that it would basically be a normal pattern, and if we wanted to use runway 7, we could maintain MDA all the way to an upwind and then circle back on a left downwind. We'd get a clear view of the runway and any traffic that might be in the pattern or getting ready to depart, which could be opposite direction with the calm conditions today. And if we did discover that there was VFR traffic using runway 25, we could enter a right downwind, because yes, it's right traffic for runway 25. Advisory glide paths like this Garmin plus V path on this approach should be used. It allows us to take an approach that's non-precision and fly it with a similar strategy that we would use to an approach with LPV minimums or with an ILS. But it's critical to remember that plus V guidance is a tool and it doesn't fundamentally change what an approach is. Below MDA, you must be able to see the runway environment and any obstacles in your way. Notes on the approach chart about obstacles or about night restrictions have to be taken seriously.